Now we're taking a closer look at the shifter cable where it mounts onto the shifter assembly. What you need to pay attention to is this hole right here. The shifter interlock cable had a white piece that had a finger that you release to lift up. Well, so does the shifter cable, and when it locks in, it kind of pokes through this hole a bit, so you need to push it back through. Once it's all the way through, then you can actually lift up on this cable assembly. So go ahead and get something in here that you can get in there to push it through with, and then lift straight up. Here's a side view of that shifter interlock cable. It has an adjustment right here, but we're not going to need to mess with the adjustment, so leave that alone. It fastens to the shifter right here. It's got one little finger that you need to pull back up on and lift. And here's the cable. Now you can actually see a portion of the paint sticking out. This is the piece that I actually had you push in on so that we could get it out of gear. That's the piece right there. The other end of it has where spring hooks on that brakes. So in order to release that, what we need to do, like I said, we need to get access to the little finger on the inboard side. Push it back and lift up. And once we lift up, we're going to push back on the cable and pick it up. The reason why is the paint piece has almost like a horseshoe type design where the cable fits down in it and pulls and locks. So we need to get back and up to release it. So we've got the shifter interlock cable all the way. Let's move on to the actual shifter cable. Now we've already got the white electrical connector loose from earlier. Now the upper connector we'll leave hooked up for now. We will be taking it loose when we're doing the repair with the shifter out of the vehicle. However, this one right here is one we need to take loose now. You just need to push in on the lock. Now sometimes these things get all kinds of coffee and Coke spilled on them, so they might be a little locked in there. Don't want to come loose, so you may have to wiggle them. And there we go, we got that one loose. So now all we got to do is go around the perimeter and get the 4 10mm nuts loose. Now we got the 4 10mm nuts around the perimeter completely off, 2 cables loose, and the electrical connector. All we got to do is make sure the carpet's no longer attached on the driver's side. There's a push pin that kind of keeps it there. All we got to do now is just grab it firmly and start lifting up. Now what we're going to be doing with the shifter assembly is we've got to separate it in pieces. We need to take the shifter knob assembly off. Then we got the upper prindle, which is the display and indicator, and the track off as well. Once we do that, we've got to separate the middle section and bottom section. Bottom section is where all the action and linkage is. That's where we're going to be doing the actual repair. Some models will actually, the knob will twist off. For example, this one right here, the shifter knob is actually threaded on. If it did not want to spin off like this one, then what you would have to do is get you a trim stick, get up under here, and you would basically be doing the same thing that I'm doing. You would actually push down and get that lock ring down. Then you would actually grab the knob and pull it with some force. But being that this one isn't that way, all I have to do is unthread it. So I'll get it off and sit to the side. Now we can start dealing with the prindle assembly. Now there's a wire, the white connector actually is the light for the prindle. So we've got to start repositioning the wiring so one, we get some slack. Because we're going to need that slack when we lift up. And if you need to, you can pop that loose. Put that to the side. Alright, now what we got to do is we got to get up in here, something like a small screwdriver, pry it and pop it up. So we're going to get something up in here, wedge, kind of push. A couple of them you can't really get to too well, but you just kind of work your way around. If you can, you get up in here and you wedge. That way you get it off and just lift it straight up off the shaft. Now the knob's off and the prindle display's off. Now we got to separate the two halves. Now before we do that, remember I mentioned about an electrical connector we still had to get off? Well, that's what we got to do next. We need to kind of pull the wire out enough to get to it. And we need to release the lock. And try pulling on the wire and get it off. Now what we've got to do is we've got to go around the whole perimeter as well near the bottom because it snaps in place. You got some hook type fasteners here. Work your way around here and here. Now being that we're on the workbench, if this spring falls out, awesome. Just keep in mind what's going on in your area in case we have to tilt it up. I just get up in here with my screwdriver I used earlier to get the prindle display off. Now try to get it released from the latch. There we go. Kind of work our way around, work it. You got one on the back side here as well. Now I'll get to the back side. Release that. Now everything is ready to separate. Just lift it straight up. Now we're down to the mechanism. This is where everything happens. You look right here. It's supposed to be a hook. Hook is gone. The way it is this spring would actually hook on one end here, and the other end would go right there. Being that breaks because the way it's built, it's kind of fragile right there and got a lot of stress. That's where the problem begins. Now, our replacement part, this one's white. Start looking at how it's oriented. You could actually see there's the hook. This one has a lot of extra plastic on it to help prevent it from breaking, unlike the original version. So this is the piece that's the upgradable piece that actually is going to fix your problem, and you shouldn't have any more issues whatsoever. Now we need to work on getting this off. Now the key to doing this, you need to remember where it's oriented. You need to make sure the pink is on the left side of the shifter. It can go either way, and if you put it in wrong, it will not work properly. So I need to get the shifter to move. So I'm going to push down on the green, move over on the handle, and start working it back. Now, there's a cutout right here. It's not going to come up until that cutout lines up. So there we go. Grab the old one. Grab the new one. Slide it down in there, and there you go. Now when we put the shifter back in place, we got to make sure we get that on this side. As long as it's on this side, we're fine. If you somehow installed it incorrectly, the shifter's not going to work right. It can go in and you can hook everything up, but then you're going to be on the wrong side. So definitely make sure you put this on the correct location. It needs to be to the left of this rod assembly. Now we can actually go ahead and worry about hooking the spring back up. It doesn't really matter which way you start from. I'm just going to grab some needle nose pliers, hook one loop on one side. What I'm going to grab these needle nose. I grab one end, go over here and try to hook it on, and there I go. We got it back in place. That's how it's supposed to be on there, and that's why the hook breaks, because there's a little bit of tension. It's no longer going to break because the added plastic, like I showed you. So there we go. We've got the shift interlock piece back in, spring on there. Now all we got to do is reinstall everything. Now the installation is pretty much the opposite of removal. Just make sure you've got everything oriented in the right position. Put your rod through, line it up coming down. You might have to give it a couple of good little pushes so it locks into all those snaps around the perimeter. Now we can worry about the electrical connector. So now the bottom section, mid section are both together. Now we can get our prindle. And when you get your prindle, you need to make sure you get the little opening line back up. That's where the track is. That's where the shifter shaft actually goes through. Line it up. Line up where the 4 fingers go into the slots. Now on this one you'll do the same thing. You just press down nice and gently. Remember, we still got this wire we need to route and put to the side. Otherwise, we know that the knob spins on. We know that you got 4 nuts that go down. We also know you got a shifter cable that has to mount here at the front. Snap on over here. And then your shift interlock cable has to mount here. And you put the cable in there. What I like to do is I like to grab the cable. I lift the cable up, put it in the slot, pull back, and then I latch it down on the mount. And then I've got the cable back in place. So, installation is just the opposite of removal. Just make sure when you go back around, when you're mounting this to the floor of the vehicle, there's no harness up under the bottom of the shifter so it doesn't get pinched. So just follow those steps. You shouldn't have any problems. Alright, so I showed you how to get it out apart. I showed you how to get the shifter out. And I also showed you how to repair the shifter. Now, there is a kit. I usually use the recall part. It doesn't come with springs, but the more research I do, I can see on eBay what people are selling the kit. It's actually a Mopar kit. It's got a normal part number, not a recall part number, and it comes with both springs. So if you go ahead and order that kit right off the bat, you'll get it off of eBay for approximately $9. Some sites actually have free shipping, so $9 worth of parts. And it'll come with the springs in case you can't find the spring. So at this point, you got the vehicle back together, it's on the road, repair's done. So at this point, I ask for any kind of thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget to like me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter, and also check me out on Instagram. If you have any kind of comments or suggestions about this video or anything Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram related, please feel free to email me at david@motorcitymechanic.com, and I'll try to get back to you in a timely manner. Once again, thanks for watching these videos.